Okay, we're live.
This is Literary Roadhouse, one short story once a week. I'm Gerald.
I'm Andy.
And I'm an ace.
Overacting Andy.
And
Well, because
Whatever.
you dropped a
Anyways.
bomb before we went live, and now we couldn't
That's-
read, so he got frozen in his facial reaction. That's what I
That's
saw.
all right. That's all right.
Right.
This
Mhm.
week, we've been reading the imaginatively named Sea Story by A.S. Byatt. It is, we're told, a tale of love and environmental disaster. Sounds good. If you haven't read it yet, pause the podcast, read the story. It's only a couple of thousand words or so. And return. We follow the life cycle of a guy called Harold, born near the sea at Filey in the north of England. If you drew a line from Manchester through Leeds, you'd end up at Filey on the east coast. Just sort of, referencing for those people who don't know. He
Right
loved
now,
living
I
by
can
the
know based on my knowledge of Manchester and Leeds.
Of Manchester and Leeds, yes, of course, everybody knows that. He loved living by the sea so much, he went to university in Cambridge, which isn't near the sea at all, to study English, which also isn't really anything to do with the sea. He returned to his hometown to teach and was fishing at sea when he met Laura, who had studied marine biology in Aberdeen but had come to Filey for a seaside break. Poor Harold fell instantly in love. However, Laura was off to her dream job in the Caribbean, studying eels of all things. He wrote, but his letters and emails went unread. Eventually, in desperation and harnessing the power of the waves, he wrote a love letter, shoved it into a plastic bottle, and chucked it in the sea. We're then treated to an A.S. Byatt special, a long drawn-out diary of where the bottle travelled before joining the Caribbean trash vortex, a pile of waste plastics the size of Texas floating in the ocean. Then we're treated to another A.S. Byatt special, a long drawn-out description of the vortex. And then we're treated to a final A.S. Byatt special, telling us how many waterborne creatures died as a result of the plastic bottle decomposing. And then whoosh, Harold married someone, not Laura, had 3 daughters, retired, and ironically connected bits of plastic off the beach in Filey, North Yorkshire. Laura had already died years ago when her boat capsized. The end.
Okay. Why? Okay. All right. You
Okay.
warned us it was going to be sarcastic, but
You
also
skipped one of the A.S. Byatt specials, which is the long inset of someone else's poetry.
It wasn't that long. It was.
Long for a short story.
I have a
Yeah.
question.
Go on.
What is your beef with A.S. Byatt?
Because many moons ago I was in a reading group and we read, I can't remember what it was, an A.S. Byatt book, and she's won the Booker Prize. She's a very, very good writer, but I think, and sorry to A.S. Byatt lovers, but she suffers from famous author syndrome. So she's so famous and such a good author that editors can't touch her work. I get that feeling. So in this
Personally, you
group
understand that feeling? You know what that's like?
yeah.
Okay, continue.
Okay, thank you. So we read this book. 12 people or so read this book. Everyone got about halfway and threw it aside because it was so annoying. And I threw it aside when the character went to a banquet. And she had paragraph after paragraph after paragraph of what was on the banquet tables: this meat, that vegetable, this and that and that. It just went on, and I thought, this is just ridiculous. So anyway, sorry, I'll shut up now.
I think Karina was just telling me about that one. She's a big A.S. Byatt fan.
Is she? Sorry, Karina.
I remember her telling me about all the food
Yes.
at these banquets. I was like, all right.
But she liked the food in the banquets.
Yeah, that's a draw.
Yeah. Okay.
I see.
Okay. Good. But it is. I mean, it is. Yes. It's. I like the. Sorry, you haven't asked us what we thought about it, but I quite like the story. I got really into the story. I thought, oh, this is very good, and that. But we don't need all that stuff. That whole blooming big paragraph about where it went, and then what the waste was, and then how many creatures died as a result of it. I mean, yeah, I get the point, I get the feeling, but anyway, that's my beef.
I felt like that's the only part we needed. I could have done less with his mom and dad at the beginning. Like, okay, I get it. They're like parents, whatever. Tell me more. How many sea turtles ate this same cap? Only 2? One ate it from the corpse of the other. What happened when that one died? It's an open question.
Yes. Maybe.
Yeah. The long paragraph of what happens to the plastic bottle was fine. So my biggest beef, I do have a beef as well. This is a beefy episode full
Good.
of beefs. It's all of that feels like the stuff that you would glean more if it was a nonfiction reporting on this, right? It's too close to nonfiction. So now, okay, but you want to do it through fiction, that's great. But now the fiction needs to layer something on here for me. It needs to illuminate something. It needs to speak to some truth. It needs to draw on some point. And that's the part that was missing. So, like, if it's about this, you don't think that was missing? Because that part was missing for me, Andy. Just because Laura died in a heap does not bring it around.
I liked the part where he never acted on anything, waited too late, and then he had a fine life, I guess. But I truly believe that Laura was the love of his life.
Really?
Yeah.
No.
And he
fell
didn't
in
do
love
it
with her
right.
like the super poet way with like no depth. We don't know at all if they're compatible.
We know they're so deeply compatible.
No, they're not. She doesn't give a monkey's what's it about him.
Give them an email address that bounces.
Yeah.
Well, she's busy in the Caribbean.
That's not why it's bouncing.
No.
She also signed up for a bunch of newsletters, and so it filled up her inbox.
No, I
And
think she gave him
previously she had been doing a short story podcast, and so that used up all of her Google Drive data.
Yeah.
That's true.
It's only £1.59 for more.
Well, she was in the Caribbean,
afford
though,
that.
so she didn't do it.
Look. Yes, I get what you're saying. That's a good point. Like he waited too long, but his life didn't end in disaster the
No,
way
hers
the
did, though.
planet does. Like not quite the same. Like if that's the analogy, then I guess
he's got
maybe Willy
3
Wonka doesn't
girls.
matter.
Yeesh.
Oh no, 3 daughters he loves very much. Dies of old age. Content. Oh no. Guess we should
He
act
didn't
on
have
climate
any
change
sons to
immediately.
carry on the family name.
I see.
It's the worst.
It's the worst thing that could have happened. Okay.
Sorry. I thought I could at least get through that part with a straight face, and I couldn't.
Anyway, I guess what I'm saying is everything that has to do with the garbage that's in our oceans and caring about that, it's absolutely okay and necessary for fiction to bring attention to it, but then you need to do more than what you would have gleaned from a nonfiction essay about it. I think that's the part that was the rub for me.
Yeah, it's just a complete info dump. She's done her research, she's found out some stuff, and she picked up that stuff and go blop. There you go. And here's another bit of research, blop. And it's not part of the story. It's not.
But I didn't want to do that research. It was so convenient to have that research presented to me in the middle of this story.
Right. Yeah, I was gonna say I don't mind the info dump in the right context, right? Like if the rest of the story is doing more with that, then having that depth adds to it. It really helps you understand what this is instead of just saying it's giant garbage in the ocean, right? You want to like definitely have the person see it, explore it, but now do something with it.
But there's ways of doing it. There's ways of doing of dropping bits of the info dump in and weaving it into the story that it's just like a giant turd in the middle of a manuscript. It's just.
Well, I mean, it changes who the main character is. Like the bottle becomes the character that you're following, so it's the bottle's journey. But okay, like you need to do more with it. Yeah.
What about the sort of like subtle information drop that Laura was the inspiration for the Outcast song "I'm Sorry, Miss Jackson"?
What?
Because I'm sorry, Miss Jackson. Ooh, I am 4 eels that she's studying in the Caribbean.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Her name is Laura Jackson, and Outcast was inspired by her marine biology work.
Mm-hmm. We're
struggling. Are you winding this up, Andrew?
I would never wind you up, Gerald.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. I mean, I liked. I mean, it was ironic that he'd thrown a plastic bottle into the sea, and
it reached her. Isn't that romantic?
no, it didn't. It did because the
It did
message
reach
didn't.
her. The message
Well,
didn't. No, but
no.
part of the plastics in the bottle reached her.
She died among that plastics, though.
Yeah, it killed her.
Romantic.
Yeah, I've watched Message in a Bottle, and that was nothing like this story. That was a good story. So there.
Yeah, I mean, I think having a human die directly from the garbage vortex after having all like the birds and sea turtles die is interesting. But we don't need Harold now. like there's just, you know what I'm saying? Like you have these three distinct sections, which is like establishing the character's lifelong love of ocean and ocean literature, and then the first time he falls in love, and then the Perrier bottles journey to the Atlantic garbage vortex. Those are your three sections, and then it's just so loosely tied together that it's like the real meat of what you're trying to say really is in that last part. And it, like I said already, it just didn't do enough with it.
Yeah.
I really liked it.
I was liking the story, and I think it was the second reading which spoilt it for me. Strangely, because normally the second reading unveils something more about the story that you missed on the first reading. And what my second reading unveiled is this huge, great pile of garbage dumped right in the middle of the story of the story I was in. I was quite interested in reading.
You meant structurally the pile of garbage, not thematically the pile of garbage.
Well, it wasn't impressive. It's not an impressive piece of fiction writing. Those three lumps, and it spoilt it for me. And I was happy. You know, I liked the start. I liked the opening. That was fine. It set the scene, and the lost love, and that's great. And the ending. I don't mind the fact that the endings go blah blah blah, and then everyone died and didn't live happily ever after. That's fine, but just wading through that swirling ocean of fact.
Yeah. You know what happened in my first read through? The author explains what nurdles are, but I still forgot what nurdles are and had to Google what nurdles are.
I forget what a nurdle is. Do you not
She
use
tells
nurdle
you.
in your everyday life?
She does, and I still couldn't like retain it for some reason on my first read through, and on my second one I could.
Because it's
Like,
not
the word was
important.
just so...
It's you know, tiny
Yeah, but
plastic.
then I did some Google image searches, and there are lots of little nurdles.
Yeah.
So this is true. She definitely researched.
No one's denying the factual accuracy of this.
Of the nurdles.
The nurdles, or anything else. I'm sure she's done her research very well, and I'm sure it's quite possible for a plastic bottle to take that strange journey, sort of east and then west again. But,
it did remind me of like current maps that I saw in like secondary school, like in science class. It seems correct. When you're doing earth science.
Oh. Yeah.
Yeah, but this is a short one for me just because I don't have much more to say. You know, I feel like there used to be more stories like this where like the story was just a vehicle to like have more people be aware of a particular social issue. But now we're like an information overload, right? Like I'm thinking of like older stories where it's like, did you know about this social issue? I put it in a story and it was kind of like this. Like it was just it kind of like follows that tradition. And then now it's in like some like magazine that was circulated or something. But now with the way that information is moving through all the time, the kinds of people who would read an A.S. Byatt short story in The Guardian are generally aware of garbage dumps in the ocean. You know what I'm saying? Like there's that aspect of it as well, of just like.
So you're saying let's fault A.S. Byatt for taking part in this rich literary tradition?
No, I'm not. I'm just saying the way that audiences consume media, information, fiction, and nonfiction now, I think has changed so much that it like that the expectation, and that always happens, right? Audiences' expectations change over time. So I think we're harder to please in that way, where it's just like we're generally aware of this, do more with it. You know what I'm saying? Like it's not
and
a
is
big
this
shock.
not a story about the horrors of consumption?
No, that's not the
really.
point. No.
No.
And people being generally aware of this is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he contributed to it. I mean, it's
Yeah, but it was romantic when he did it, and it killed a whole lot of things.
Weird. You can get glass Perrier bottles if you want to, and then it would have been more like old timey, which was his bag. Like his whole jam was like old timey ocean stuff. So do glass.
Yeah, I don't know why he put the signet ring in a plastic bottle. That was
to be
dumb.
more real. That's the one thing I liked. The one thing I liked was the locks of hair and the ring, so it's more real. When he's like, oh, I don't know if all I'm doing is just, throwing my love out. Like that was the one moment I was just like, human. We're talking about like an actual truth where he's there like, I don't know if what I'm doing is just casting out my love, like an exorcism kind of thing. Not the word the author used, but basically like, am I just getting rid of my love or am I like hoping to deliver my message? Right? I don't care. I don't know. I'm indifferent. Let me put in my hair and my grandfather's signet ring because I definitely want one particular outcome and I'm romanticizing this. I like that. That was the one moment where I was just like, okay, something interesting's happening. Like that like self-delusion people have.
I don't think the ring killed anyone. Is that right?
It did. It killed the hagfish.
Oh, it killed the hagfish.
That one sunk to the bottom and then
it
and choked. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. I do like that. Like, I don't care. I don't know. I'm just putting it out there. Whatever.
And it's quite funny that a fat eel that she'd gone to study took the letter with its sweeping words and excreted it. So the eel says, "That's what I think of your." You see, it sort of fits in with her treatment of him.
Paper's biological.
Yeah, they said that one decomposes.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, I don't know why he didn't send it in glass, given everything we learned about him in part 1 of this very short story. Which is old-timey ocean stuff. Is
because she drank out of the
a Perrier, yes.
It was romantic. It was a link
to
her. It was melding of his interests and her interests. The one thing we know about her, she likes.
Listen, but she doesn't like polluting oceans.
Yeah.
At least glass turns into sea glass and sand. Glass is one of the more environmentally safe ones. It just takes a long time.
There you go. So that's AS Byatt. Sorry, everyone, but
you recommended it. I didn't know you had AS Byatt beef, so now I'm really surprised since you recommended the story. And apparently, you've been traumatized.
Well, I thought I was all right. A short story, 2,000 and odd words. I thought, great, we're not going to have any wandering nonsense for hour after hour. But
also, you were specifically picked this because you didn't want a bleak story where everybody dies.
That's true.
Well, because everyone dies. Everyone anyway. I hate to break it to you, but yeah, I did.
No one gets out alive.
No. This is what happens. So, but while before they died, they had a good life. They doing stuff they wanted to do. He picked up rubbish from the beach, and she was doing what she was doing.
Right, eel shit,
yeah, and things like that. So yeah, so it wasn't a yes, they died in the end, but it wasn't a sad story particularly. I think they.
I mean, the sea turtles didn't necessarily live a full life.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Or Laura.
Like the hagfish, fuck a hagfish. I'll be the first to say.
What's
fuck
the problem with hagfish?
But those poor sea turtles, fuck a hagfish.
All the different kinds of birds.
Yeah. There you go. And a mollymawk. I've never heard of a mollymawk. Presumably.
So many kinds of seabirds.
Yeah. I'm sure it's absolutely a Caribbean seabird, I'm sure. That'll be a fact tick done. Sorted.
Okay.
Because you can trust that she did the research.
Shall I stop
it's just funny. You're just like, I'm sure it was all correct factually. Well done, you encyclopedia of a story.
Apparently, in the Spelljammer source book, Boo's Astral Menagerie, there are space mollymawks.
Wow.
So that's an interesting fact.
She didn't say that, though, did
Spelljammer friends.
No. Yeah, that wasn't featured.
Shall we rate this story before we continue to just spiral?
Yeah, I guess 24 minutes on. What would I give it? A 3. A 3.
Yeah, I was coming in at a 3, but I thought I was being too generous giving what I've given 3s to, so I'm going to a 2. You got to do something with it.
Yeah.
You got to do something.
Yeah, I only gave it 3 because the beginning and the end were enjoyable, and I enjoyed reading that, but the bit in the middle spoiled it. Come on, Andy.
I'm gonna give it a 5.
Wow.
Whoa,
Ended
really?
hard enough for it to be a 5.
I think I said the strongest things that could be said.
Wow.
Not
And
very
you give it a
strong.
5.
Do you remember when the bottle went through all those different places and we
Mhm.
learned about currents and we learned about how big the garbage pile is in the ocean?
Mhm.
That's great. And then
Yeah. I didn't mind
loved
reading it at
so
all. I
much
didn't have
how
that reaction.
I loved so much how, as an afterthought at the very end, it's like, oh yeah, and Laura's been dead for years.
Yeah, by the way, yes.
By the way, she died a long time ago.
You know, she's not important. So,
Mhm. Okay, so Andy,
Okay.
what are we reading next week?
Next week, we are reading a short story.
Okay. Good. Is it fiction or non-fiction?
I was
Fiction.
surprised by the question.
Yeah, it's called "Time is an Ocean." You see, thematically linked
Hey.
by Angela Liu.
Like what you
Okay.
did there.
Mhm. But before you go, tell us about your first love in our Facebook discussion group, the Literary Roadhouse Readers. Want to read more fiction that explores climate change and just garbage? Keep this podcast going by leaving a review of Literary Roadhouse wherever you get your podcasts, or support us on patreon.com/Literary Roadhouse. Every bit helps. And as always, share this podcast with the people who dive in frigid waters in your life. Until next time, read a good story.